something else pops up, feel free to let me know and we'll dive into that as well. I love that we are creating this awesome community. I love seeing everyone come together. So many of us are like-minded, right? We really want a smart, sensible way to approach healthcare. We are more inclined to want natural solutions, holistic remedies, but we're also not way off on the deep end over there saying everything's bad or everything's good. We're taking that middle path. So if you guys have been watching me and following me, first of all, thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate it so much. This has been my life's work. I've been doing this for a while now. I'm not going to give my age away, but I have been really kind of putting my nose down and at it for a bit. And I think it's such a privilege to build a community, bring people together, and really help us all learn from one another. And I learn from you guys every single day. Every day I walk into the practice, I learn even more. So it doesn't stop. And our mission to really change medicine, our mission to empower women and families, that will continue to stay strong. And it's a global mission. Remember that. So as I'm talking, if you guys want to tell me where you're from, I think that's always fun too, to know where everybody is joining in from. I know there are people joining in from all around the world and all around the country. So I, by the way, am based in Atlanta. So I'm Atlanta based, but open to everyone now because we're doing so much virtual work and so much digital work. And it's been so fun to meet and talk to people from all different parts of the country: New Jersey, Australia, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, you name it. We're there. And so I think it's just, again, such a gift. And so I'm so grateful to all of you. So we're going to get to it. It's Tuesday night. Lots of headlines, lots of questions. I'm going to do a little bit of both. Of course, the number one thing on everybody's mind continues to be the pandemic. Lots of questions over the last few weeks about the vaccines. I did a webinar. Hopefully you guys caught that, but I did do a webinar today over on the CenterSpring site, all about the immune system. So I hope you caught that. It was long and I still felt like I barely touched the surface. I was just like right there, but it really talked about all the key concepts of immune health, what we need to do about the Delta variant, what COVID is, how it differs from the flu and from the cold. Right now, my own son, and I even feel it a little bit, we've been fighting a little bug. We're all COVID negative. It's not COVID, but it's, again, that fear, right? Like, oh my gosh, I have a cold. Does this mean, what does this mean for me? So I think all of us have a little bit of that fear. So again, kids have been in school for a couple of weeks. Remember, as they get in school and they mingle with everybody, lots of bugs are out in the air. It's not just COVID, but it's important to get them checked out and understand what they're dealing with. So just putting that out there as well. All right, let's get into some of the headlines. And some of these headlines are not COVID related, but they're important because they are indirectly related and they connect back to you and to your wellness and the health of your family. All right, sugar. How many of you guys watching me today struggle with sugar, right? Maybe not personally, but within your families. You find your children reaching for processed sugary snacks, or someone you love has sugar cravings, or maybe you might have sugar cravings. Well, sugar is an issue, but the sugar in packaged foods is a bigger issue. So sometimes it's not the dessert that you sat down and ate, it's actually the packaged gummies or the box of cookies or some of that type of thing that is more damaging. Here's a study talking about what would happen if we reduce sugar, much like Europe, in our packaged goods. And this is saying essentially that cutting 20% of the sugar from packaged foods and 40% from beverages could prevent 2.48, I'm going to say that again, 2.48 million cardiovascular disease events, strokes, heart attacks, cardiac arrest, 490,000 cardiovascular deaths, and 750,000 cases of diabetes. So much impact with just cutting sugar. Critical stuff. So my advice in your family and around, take a look at the sugar that they're getting in, start adding up those sugar grams, understand where they're coming from. Remember, at the end of the day, sugar triggers inflammation, and inflammation is what's making us vulnerable to all the different viruses out there, not just COVID. All right, so keep that in mind as well. All right, let's keep going. So here's another one. Pesticides, right? We've talked about this one before. We talk all the time about your toxic load, right? If you go to the Dr. Taz site, you will see right there under take my test. I have all these fun personalized tests that I try to put together to help you guys find a roadmap to your health. And I have a comment here with someone who's been seeing Christina in my office. She's amazing, but not everybody can always come to the office, right? So if you can't be a patient, even though we made it easier, by the way, because of virtual and all this other stuff, but let's say you can't come, at least you have a little bit of a roadmap to your health, a starting point, so to speak. So this pesticide, this article, it's a study coming out of Canada talking about the fact that researchers discovered, and here's a big word, chlorpyrifos, I probably said it wrong, chlorpyrifos is actually banned in Canada, but not banned in other parts of the world. It's sprayed on fruits and vegetables, the very thing I'm telling you guys to eat, but it's sprayed on fruits and vegetables, and it slows down the burning of calories in animal models, really creating conditions where the body stores these calories, promoting obesity. So we knew our toxic load, or obesogens is what they're called. They're chemicals that promote obesity. We knew that was a problem. We knew already that this was something that was affecting overall health, but now studies are slowly trickling out, talking about how they're directly connected to obesity and how we've got to pay attention. This is why buying organic helps. This is also why washing everything helps. It's so important to wash your fruits and vegetables and really pay attention to that toxic load and where you may be getting toxins filtering in your daily diet. Hey there, Travis. How are you? I hope you're doing well. I hope your travels from here in Florida are going okay. I know that's got to be a bear. But anyways, really wanted to call attention to that particular study because it's highlighting the importance of paying attention to toxicity. And remember, again, the US, at least, I don't know how many of you guys are in Europe, but for the US, it's not really banning as many chemicals as are banned, in other parts of the world. So keep that in mind. All right, this one's interesting, and then we'll get to your questions because we got a ton of questions, which I appreciate. But there are two things I want to touch on that I found super interesting. It's probably the nerd in me, but evidence mounts that the MMR and the Tdap vaccines, remember those? Who remembers those vaccines? We got them when we were younger. They're still a part of sort of the AAP or the pediatric schedule. They're usually administered a routine health pediatric well checks, but evidence mounts that the MMR and the Tdap vaccines strengthen protection against severe COVID. So this one puzzled me a bit. I'm like, well, what's the science of that? That's interesting. But what they're finding is that, yes, some of these vaccines that when they're named for a particular virus or infection or bacteria, yes, they protect against that. But there's a certain amount of cross-reactivity where they act as a protector against other foreign invaders too. So this study was actually done at Brigham and Women's Hospital, and it was looking at data that really said what's happening is that these vaccines help to elicit a cross-reactive memory T cell response that then in turn sort of subdues something like COVID-19. So that's interesting. I thought it was interesting. I didn't know that they could cross-react like that and provide a protective effect. I know we debate vaccines all the time, but the science of vaccines, I think, is really important to understand. All right, and then one more, and then we'll get to all the questions that you guys sent in today. Omega-3 fatty acids. Anyone taking an omega-3 fatty acid? Maybe raise their hand. You can wave at me. Omega-3s, we know, have all types of benefits, right? Omega-3s help with inflammation. They help with heart health. They help with weight. They help with skin and hair and so much more. In fact, they even help with lowering triglycerides. There's so many benefits to omega-3s. But here is a study that was so interesting. It was talking about looking at the genetics, and they looked at Hispanics in particular, and Hispanics that actually descended from Native Americans or indigenous American populations, right? Because when you think about, how the Hispanics, people coming in from Guatemala and Costa Rica and all those places, they already had a Native American population there, right? All through the US, a Native American population. Well, genetically, that population is very low in omega-3s, and that has filtered through the generations. So Hispanics that have some of that Native American blood are found to be incredibly low in omega-3 fats. And it shows how, precision nutrition or personalized nutrition really is what's needed. We can't make these broad generalizations that, this is good for you and that's bad for you and have blanket statements. We really do need to understand the individual and what needs to happen in terms of tailoring your diet and really focusing in on where they need to be. So Omega-3s are super important. Remember, my general recommendation for omega-3s is around 2 to 3 grams a day. If you've got high triglycerides, right, that are clogging up your heart and affecting your cholesterol numbers, the recommendations, quite honestly, are even higher. They're around 4 to 6 grams a day, but they play a huge role and are naturally found, remember, fatty fishes, nuts, seeds, all of these great foods, and they really help manage so many different processes in the bodies. If you're Hispanic, of Native American descent, that's in your genetics, you need more. And so that's something definitely to take into account when you're trying to build that supplement regimen. All right, how many of you are on a supplement regimen? I'm curious. You can kind of wave at me if you want, but I know so many of you are on a regimen. Here's my general rule. Those regimens need to be targeted. They need to be focused to your chemistry, right? I usually don't want you on more than about 5 or 6 different supplements because that's hard to metabolize. And then I feel like we're in the same boat that we are in allopathic medicine where we have you on 6 different medications. So again, we want to be efficient and we want to be smart and we want to be focused. That's why I talk so much in the practice about that core concept. What's the main idea? I know mine. I want you to know yours. And that's how we can really get results. And those of you who have been to the practice know that we kind of think that way, we kind of work that way, and we kind of try to present information that way. All right, I'm getting a question about this study. Let's see what age group they looked at. This is a Brigham and Women's study. It was released today. Let's see if I can find the age group. I don't see it. I think they actually looked at adults, believe it or not. They did not look at children. I think this is a study on adults, but I'll try to research this more and get back to you. But yeah, it looks like they looked at adults, they didn't look at children. All right, one more on the environment, then we're going to move on. So PFAs, you guys, polyfluoroalkyl something, substances, right? So we are breathing in more and more of these in our indoor air, and it's linked to infertility, immune system dysfunction, chronic inflammation, and so much more. We have a study coming out of the Green Science Policy Institute. The air we breathe in our homes, our schools, and workplaces can be polluted with harmful PFA chemicals, according to a study published today in Environmental Science and Technology Letters. That, in turn, is finding these PFAs in our kindergarten classrooms. Seriously, our little ones? No wonder they're all having all these strange symptoms and learning issues. The results suggest the quality of indoor air is underestimated, an important source of exposure to PFAs, particularly for our children. Good grief, guys. We've got to get this under control. So many of our kids today have learning difficulties, right? Trouble focusing, trouble concentrating, dyslexia, ADD, ADHD. There is a chemical story to those conditions. We have to understand it. There's a liver story to those conditions as well. And if we don't put the pieces of that together, just sending them off to OT and PT and giving them ADD medications is not going to be the answer. We've got to understand the whole picture, where toxicity fits in with their genetics and what they need. Again, that personalized approach to everything is really what's going to win at the end of the day. And that's why we have to change medicine, right? That's why we have to make different things happen here. Okay, so let's keep moving here. I've got lots of questions, a lot of hellos. Hi, everybody. I hope you guys are all doing well. Thank you guys for the love and the support. I'm getting so many sweet comments. Thanks again for all of that. All right, let's break down some of these questions. All right, we'll start with we were just talking about nutrients and supplements. The top 3 vitamins I take. So the ones I cannot live without, right? So there's some that I'll rotate. But again, since I know my main idea, the ones I cannot live without are my Lush Locks, right? That's my hair vitamin. And a lot of that and that's a patented formula, by the way. But I created that because that was my story. I lost a lot of hair, as many of you know, in my 20s. And anytime I get super stressed out, it happens again. So hoping to keep this head of hair for another 20 or 30 years. But Lush Locks is amla. It's fo tea, which is a Chinese herb, methylated B vitamins. It has magnesium and iron in it. I call it kind of the hair kitchen soup, I guess, but it has a lot of great formulas for hair. So I try to take that consistently. I take my omega-3s with the D. I have a particular product that's Pro Omega D from Nordic Naturals, which is both omega-3s and Ds. So those are my 2 tops. I take iron because I chronically run really low in iron, and that in turn affects my thyroid, which, I'm not on any thyroid medication or any hormones right now, but I am on nutrients that support the hormones like the methylated Bs and iron to help keep my hormones kind of where they need to be. So I think those are the ones I'm the most, oh no, I'm not done. I take digestive enzymes with my evening meal. And then I take either magnesium or my sleep savior at night so I can sleep deeply. And this stuff works. I mean, it's interesting now that we're all using trackers, right? This is just a basic Fitbit, but some of you have like Whoops and Apple Watches and all the stuff that tracks you. And I find it all fascinating. But now that I've started to look at this, and I was talking about it earlier this morning on my stories, like when I take my magnesium or my sleep savior, I get more REM sleep and deeper sleep than when I don't take it. So it's improving my sleep quality, which in turn improves my body's ability to recover and heal and do all that other good stuff. So again, so those are my top ones. And if something else is going on, like right now, I'm fighting whatever my son has. So I'm taking the Defender and something called Umka that supports my immune system and helps me to minimize that viral load. So those will kind of rotate through. So even with our patients, kind of that's where I want them. Your core idea. Mine is I got to be gluten-free. I have low iron. I have to protect my thyroid. I have a tendency to run really low in fats. Those are kind of my main ideas. I want everybody else to know their main ideas. They have their core supplement regimen, regimen, and then they have the things that they can rotate and kind of dance around it. And to the point that you don't need this stuff. Bullshit. Sorry, excuse my language. I see test after test that show where these nutrient deficiencies are low, they're not where they need to be, and there is no way humanly possible to eat so perfectly to get every nutrient level right where it needs to be. It's simply not going to happen. And on top of that, we've got genetic mutations that dictate a particular type of chemistry that we in turn need to support. So you'll hear from anyone, right? Like, oh my gosh, this is in my family. Everyone in my family has that. Well, everyone in your family has that because there is a gene that predicts that you guys will always be low in that. Like my low iron, my mom has it, her family had it. What was their answer? They ate red meat 3 times a day. Is that healthy? No. That's why a lot of them died of cardiometabolic issues. So my answer is, let me take some iron. Let me see if I can absorb some iron. So my point being, like, you've got to target the nutrition and your supplementation to your main ideas. That's when it's effective. It's not effective to have a grocery bag that you just keep dumping things in and randomly take things whenever you want. All right. So that's my high horse about supplements. All right, let's move on. I see some comments. I'm going to come back to these, I promise. But while we're talking about hair, what hair products do I recommend? Shampoos, conditioners, etc. I haven't really married myself to a particular shampoo or conditioner. I'll constantly switch things around. I've used a lot of the Alba Botanica products. I've used a lot of Aveda products. I try to pick things that don't have too many chemicals or super heavy, things that are super heavy or toxic for my hair. So I can't say that I have this one brand that I do all the time. I can tell you guys, top secret, but I can tell you guys we're working on a Lush Locks shampoo and conditioner. I've been playing with that formula for a year and a half now, I think, and we're almost there. We're almost there where that can be widely available for everybody, hopefully before the end of the year. But that's got a lot of these awesome ingredients in it, and Palo Santo, which if you guys know about that, that's not an herb, right? It's more of an essence that really dispels negativity, but also has this great scent to it. So I thought that would be a great thing to add in. But anyhow, we've been playing with it and can't wait to show it. Maybe you guys can be my first test cases, right? We'll send out a first test run and see what everybody thinks about it. But that's where I am with that. Okay, this question's a little bit easier. How does one find an integrated functional provider in their area? Southeast Florida, to be specific. I get asked that all the time. My recommendations are usually twofold. You can go on to the IFM site, the Institute of Functional Medicine. They usually have a list of everyone who's kind of interested in the field, studying in the field, or has gotten certification. We've got a lot of doctors certified in our practice for sure. And then we do virtual visits too, by the way, if you want to toggle between, coming in every now and then and doing virtual visits. So just remember that. And we do have that option at Center Spring. And then the other side is where I went, the University of Arizona program in integrative medicine. And that program, same thing. They have a map of all their graduates. And so a lot of times you can see where people are and just look at and see who's in Florida and see if they can be helpful for you. All right. Today's webinar. Did everybody catch the webinar today that I did over at Center Spring on immune health and what we can do and my thoughts on the Delta variant? It was long. It's too long for me to go in to now. And even as long as it was, there was still so much information I felt like I didn't even touch. But I encourage you guys, if you didn't see that, I don't know if you can still register for it or not, but they send out those recordings in about 48 hours to the folks that registered. To everyone who did not register, we will do it again for sure, because the information, as always, keeps changing and there's always new stuff and new things to talk about. So, so keep your eyes out for that. At what age should we test for peri or premenopause? So my little soapbox on this is you should probably, as a woman and even as a man, be testing your hormones at a minimum yearly and ideally every 6 months. And the reason for that is I can give you a random age. I can tell you at 35, check your hormones. But here's the deal. In today's climate, with the toxicity, the stress, the pandemic, all the stuff going on, right? We are seeing shifts in hormones younger and younger, more young women going into early menopause, more young men having issues with low testosterone, and we want to catch it. The sooner we catch it, the faster we can change it and turn it around, right? So we don't want it to go on for years and years and then figure out, well, why are you low progesterone? Why is your thyroid crash? What's happening with testosterone? We really do want to catch it early. So I would say the sooner the better. And if you don't believe me, we checked hormones on both my children who are 12 and 13, and we've already learned so much, some of which I've shared with you guys, right? Like, my 13-year-old, high DHEA, high androgens, already on the road to PCOS. The sooner we know that, the better, because now I can monitor her from year to year. I can understand what's happening with her hormones, and we can do something about it. But if she had waited until she was ready to have a child, or waited, till she was 35, that might have been too late. And those are the cases that I often see in practice over and over again. So we don't want to do that. All right. I wish my hubby was here. Suggestions on what to do before having a root canal. All right, I can give you my suggestions. So pre-root canal, we want to bring inflammation down, right? So that would be the first thing. So really taking things like quercetin, which is an anti-inflammatory, making sure you've got a good oral sort of pH, essentially. So doing things like probiotics, a lactobacillus probiotic, to balance the oral microbiome would be something else I'd highly recommend. And then also making sure your toxic load or your heavy metal load is low prior to going into that root canal. Those are things that might be helpful in terms of having a successful outcome. So I would keep that in mind as well. All right, so we covered your questions. Let's see about some of these comments. Let's see, I don't use refined sugar, use agave, raw honey, or coconut palm sugar. Absolutely. In fact, I think we have a YouTube video on all the different types of sugar. There may be one on the site if you go to my YouTube site, but I know we definitely have one coming soon. So stay tuned for that. A lot of people like agave. It is low glycemic index. It got some flack for a little while because it's processed, right? So the processing piece, some people, were debating. But here's the deal with a lot of those alternative sugars like stevia and monk fruit and agave and maple syrup. You don't need as much. So you kind of train your taste buds to sweeten down, meaning what's sweet to you, you really don't need a ton of sugar. And that's the goal. Have you ever had like a slice of cake from an Italian or French bakery and then had a slice of cake from like Publix, right? Or an American bakery, and just notice the vast difference in sweetness. I mean, it is night and day. The American taste bud and their need for sugar is so much higher than what it is in other countries, for sure. Okay, moving along here. Let's see if there are any other comments or questions. Let's see. What's more important, REM or deep sleep? Great question. I love that question. Actually, deep sleep, believe it or not. REM is important too. You heal during deep sleep. That's the recovery period for you. So getting about an hour and a half, 90 minutes is roughly the rule of both REM and deep sleep is the goal when you're tracking all this stuff. All right, let's see what else is going on. You're glad to see you on the gram. I love the gram. I love Facebook too, guys, but I think Instagram of all my platforms might be the favorite. I don't know why. I think we get a combination of video and pictures and lives and all this fun stuff. So thank you guys for joining me here. I think it's so fun. And thanks for your kind words as well. You get very low deep sleep. How can you improve? Okay, so my example, right? The example I just gave, that I think I get more deep sleep. At least I've noticed I get more deep sleep when I take magnesium or one of these sort of herbs that calm down cortisol, right? Because what's my problem? But buzzing, right? Constant buzzing. Oh my gosh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to invent that. I'm going to do whatever, like be quiet. So to get that quietness and to get the brain to rest, things like magnesium, Rhodiola is another great one. Tulsi, magnolia bark, which is in Sleep Savior. These are things that quiet the brain. I would run an experiment on yourself, like wear a tracker, see how much deep sleep you're getting, and then do something that lowers cortisol and see if you get more deep sleep. And I bet you're going to come back and tell me that the answer is yes. I think the other part of this too is having like a really relaxing nighttime routine, right? So if we're like, you're trying to get your last emails done right before bed, not a great idea. You're not going to get deep sleep because the brain is already wired. So you really want to have a wind down, lights down, air down. You're doing something fun and relaxing, and then you're essentially getting ready for bed rather than answering emails and sending text and who knows what else we as crazy people do. So anyhow, oh my gosh, familiar faces. Hello, everybody. Hello, Samantha. I hope you're doing well. Oh my gosh, I miss my LA crew. I feel like I don't see those folks. I was in LA, in full disclosure, but it was such a short trip and I was in and out of there, and still like there's so much weirdness going on with the pandemic and all that stuff, but I miss traveling to LA and New York the way I was before. I was going there so frequently, and I feel like that doesn't happen anymore. All right, I'm getting a lot of questions about my magnesium. So I'm on a mag chelate, which is also in Cerenese. That's one of our products. But a chelate is essentially multiple forms of magnesium kind of mashed up together. That's the one that seems to work the best. If we're worried about sleep, you want a glycinate, a chelate, or an aspartate, or a threonate. Those are the kinds you want. Big words, I know. If you're worried about gut health, that's where a citrate seems to work kind of the best. Okay, so that's the difference. All right, root canals. I'm not going to comment much on root canals. A, because I don't know all the debates around them, and B, because my husband's a dentist and he will kill me, and I'd rather stay alive for right now. All right, magnesium, Tulsi, rhodiola. I agree. I love all of those things. Can your hair grow back if a person is losing it due to an autoimmune disease? Absolutely. We just have to get the inflammation down, and we have to rehab the gut so that you absorb the nutrients so your hair can do what it needs to do. So yes, I am testimony to that, right? This was open, guys. This was empty. This was balding. I was covering it in 5 different ways to like not let people see it, but it came back. And so it does come back. We have to do the right things. Now, it hasn't come back in its glory, right? Like I had some big Texas hair, like even though I'm not Texan, right? I'm Indian. My parents are Indian, but I was born in Texas, but I had massive, big hair. So my mother will never be happy with what happened to my hair. She's like, it's not the same, simply not the same. And she's right. It's not the same, but hey, I'm also like significantly older and 2 babies and businesses in, and I think I deserve kind of what I've got right now. All right. Magnesium for men too. Absolutely. Magnesium works for men. My husband actually takes it. I don't think he would be embarrassed if I said that. It absolutely works across the board. All right, what's an optimal? Okay, questions about ferritin. Let's talk about ferritin. Let's see. So Holly too was talking about ferritin over here, saying your OB told you low ferritin wouldn't give you the symptoms you were having when it was for, I'm not sure what you mean there, and they don't even test for that. I know they don't test for ferritin. So low ferritin will create fatigue and brain fog and hair loss and trouble focusing. Super high ferritin, right? Above, I would say 100 is a sign of inflammation. So the sweet spot to answer your question, Lacey, is that ferritin needs to be somewhere between 30 and 70 is sort of an ideal range. For those of us who deal with hair loss and iron absorption issues, we really want that ferritin to be at least 50. And I have so much trouble getting it there. Like I got slack and my last ferritin level was 9. And that's why when you talk about my supplements, I need to be on iron. And I actually have started doing iron shots as well, because again, if you're forgetting to do these things and take them consistently, then we have to find another way to get them in. So we want those ferritin levels 30 to 50, higher, even up to 70 if you have hair loss. All right, POTS. Someone's asking me a question about POTS. Anyone know what POTS is? It's postural orthostatic tachycardia, essentially. We see a lot of young women with it. We see, women in their 20s and 30s with it too. It is due to a hormone imbalance. It is also related to PCOS, or polycystic ovarian syndrome. What I think is happening is that progesterone levels are very low, estrogen levels are imbalanced, insulin's all over the place, and cortisol is dysregulated. So you have to start by balancing progesterone and start by, again, nourishing the gut and getting it to where it can absorb the minerals it needs for healthy hormone balance. And then from that point forward, you can start to deal with it. But yes, and yes, and yes, POTS is absolutely hormonally based as well. All right, I was told I have low ferritin but high iron. Is that because you're not absorbing? Absolutely. That means that you have a gut issue. So I would look into the gut component of what's going on with you and try to understand that, because we know that when iron is high, you're getting enough, you're producing enough, but it's just not going into storage form. So that's usually typically absorption. So, and that's usually gut health. So definitely an issue there. Okay, top recommendations for an enlarged prostate. I usually, when there's an enlarged prostate, I do two things. I will balance the microbiome of the gut because it influences the microbiome of everything else, including the bladder, including the prostate. So that's probably the first thing to do. Going on a good probiotic, 100 billion CFUs probably daily is really helpful. And then I usually like putting men on saw palmetto because it will lower testosterone levels, but not dramatically like some of the medications, and oftentimes result in prostate that's shrinking. So those are kind of some of the things I'll do right off the bat. There are some other herbs and stuff like that that help with prostate health too. But again, those are conversations I usually have with my patients. All right, would I recommend curcumin? Yes, absolutely. If you're fighting inflammation, I'm a huge fan of curcumin, right? And we've probably talked about this before, but the dose for inflammation is about 2 to 3 grams, essentially. We want those really, really high doses to bring inflammation down. So, and then again, recent studies are suggesting you could potentially go even higher. You could go all the way up to 6 grams a day too. All right. I think I got everyone's questions. Let me make sure we got everybody over here on Facebook as well. I think I got everyone's questions. Lots of hellos. I hope everyone's doing well. This is a great way to close out. What do we do about inflammation? Inflammation is the word of the moment. I wish it was the word we used when we talked about the pandemic, right? But inflammation is essentially the body fighting against itself. It can't fight anything else when it's fighting itself. It can't fight a virus. It can't fight a cold or the flu or even any of the sort of day-to-day stressors. What can you do about inflammation? You've got to start with an anti-inflammatory diet. That is your number one. Food is your medicine. Ditch the gluten, ditch the dairy, ditch the sugar, really get into like a plant-based diet with lean proteins, those type of things, lots of healthy fats. That is a starting point. You could do everything else right, but if you don't get that right, then the inflammation will continue. Then we want to rehab the gut. So usually we'll put a lot of our patients on a gut protocol, a liver balancing protocol that kind of cleans those two key organs up, and it helps you to depuff and debloat, right? And that essentially brings inflammation down as well. And then from there, like, do we need to do things like curcumin, high dose omega-3s, boswellia bark, all these other things that help with inflammation. So that's your starting point. We could keep going. It's hard to do it all. You've got to decide where to begin. Sleep plays into that. Stress plays into that. Hormones play into it as well. But if you wanted just a couple things to do, think about your diet, think about gut health, think about the liver, and kind of move outwardly from there. So I hope that's helpful and not super, super overwhelming. All right, I went over, guys. It's a lot to get into 30 minutes or so, but thank you guys for taking time out to join me. We're back on a schedule again. So Tuesday nights it is. So, and remember, send me your questions, right? Send them to me throughout the week. I'm trying to catch them. Got a great team that's trying to help me. And then we're trying to catch them the day of too, so we make sure we address them all right here. All right, I'm signing off. Have a good rest of your week, and we will talk soon. I don't think I have any more lives coming up this week, but